Hello and welcome to the very first lesson. We are looking at pygame. Today we're going to be looking at getting started with creating a basic window in pygame and creating a game loop that we can control and add things to over time. So the very first thing you need to do is go to your Python IDLE, whether you're using the original Python IDE or you're using the Visual Studio Code one, and set up a new Python file. Here's a blank Python file saved into my area. Okay. So the very first thing we are going to look at doing is getting pygame working within Python. And to do that, we need to start off by importing the Python pygame library. So very simply, import pygame. Now get into the habit as you're working of commenting your code. In the coursework later on, you actually get marks for commented code and clarity of the commented code. So very simply here, all I am doing is putting a comment, import pygame library. Okay. So now Python has access to the pygame library and it can use it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to initialize the game with pygame. So to do that, there's my comment, pygame dot init, initialize, like that. That will initialize the pygame function, the library and its commands and things within our game. Okay. So within your game, within your screen and things, you are going to need some colors. Now we could hard code the colors into the game and use them when we want, but a much better way is by defining the colors at the start and then we just call them their names like variables when we need them. So at the top here, what I'm going to do is put a comment here, define some colors, and I'm going to make some colors. For example, black equals 0, 0, 0. Now where do those numbers come from? Those numbers are RGB color codes, hexadecimal color codes here. Okay. Now 000 is black, for example. 255, 255, 255 is white. However, there are a whole variety of different color codes that you can pick from, and you can find them simply by going to, for example, the Google color picker. And if I find any color here, I can choose from under the rainbow, red, for example. Down the bottom here are my RGB color codes. This shade of red, for example, there is 189 by 88.68. And you can find pretty much any color you want and get its RGB color code there to use in pygame. For example, if I wanted blue, let's choose a nice blue there. I'm going to copy that color code for blue. And in here, I'm just going to type in blue equals, and then put in my 3 RGB values for color codes. And again, I can do more, white, etc. 255, 255, 255. And we can add more as we need them in our game. But declaring them here just means later on, when I need to use them, I can just type in blue or white, whatever I need. Okay. Next important thing. At the moment, our game isn't going to exist. It has no window. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set the size of the screen that we're going to use for the game. To do that, I'm going to make a variable here called size, and I'm going to define the height and the width of the screen. 640 wide by 480 height. And of course, we can change this numbers later on. We can make them bigger or smaller depending on the window that we need. Okay. Now we've got the size of our screen. Let's actually set up a screen window. So again, screen is a variable equals, and this bit's important, pygame dot display dot set underscore mode, and then I'm using the sizes that I've created above here. So I could put these numbers in here if I wanted to in the brackets. But it's better to use it up here because we can access and use the size elsewhere in our program. If we wanted to put something in the middle of the screen, for example, we can use that size variable later on. So it's better to put it as a separate variable. Okay. Now at this stage, I can actually run my game for the first time. If you go to run and run module or press F5 on your keyboard, you'll see the code will run in the shell and I get my first game window appearing. This is the size that I've specified. Okay, and that's all it does at the moment. Very simple. It's just creating a new game window for me to use. Okay, let's learn something else about what we can do with the window. So the first basic thing we can do with the window is set the title or the caption at the top. So set window caption. And to do that, all we have to do, again, pygame is the name of the library, display dot set underscore caption. And in here, I'm going to type in my caption for the window, Mr. Gorvin's first game. That's the caption that I want to appear on the top of the window when I run my game. If I run it again now, F5 on the keyboard, it's going to ask me to save it. Yes. And I should see at the top of my game here, it says Mr. Gorvin's first game at the top of my window. So I know that's worked. Okay. So last thing before we actually start doing things with the game, etc. In your game, it's going to run different actions continually in a loop. And we can control how fast, basically, pygame will run things as it's going around the loop. To do that, we'll look at this more later on. We're going to control how fast the game updates the screen, how fast it continually updates the screen. And to do that, we're going to use a clock. So Python has a built-in clock function. And to do that, it's pygame.time.clock with a capital C, like that. That is creating a clock function that we can control and use in our game. Okay, and later on we'll look at how to set that in a second. So we've created a clock that's going to be controlled. Now to actually do things in our game, to run code, to make things move around the screen, etc., what we have to do is create a main program loop. This is a loop that's going to keep running while our game is active. And very simply, to start here, just above the loop, in fact, I'm going to do it here. I'm going to put done equals false. So I'm creating a Boolean variable that says done equals false. The game is not done yet. And then our main loop, while done equals false. So while the game is not finished, we're going to do things inside our loop. This is where I'm going to put all our actions in the game. Okay, all the things we want to do. So for the minute, the only action we're gonna have in our first little demo here is to detect when the person has finished the game and has closed it. Okay, we'll look at this more again later on. But in our main loop here, I'm going to get all the events from the user. We're going to find anything the user might have done. And just follow this code for a second. For event in pygame.event.get, bracket. So that is going to get all the possible keyboard events, and code on the end, and triggers, things like mouse clicks that the user might do. It's going to listen out for it. And then we're going to check for one event at the moment. Event.type equals pygame.quit, capital QUIT. So basically, that is checking to see if I have clicked on the cross in the corner of the pygame window. And if I have clicked on the cross on that pygame window, to end the game, I'm going to say done equals true. Oops, true. So basically, this loop is going to keep going round and round and round and round until I click on that X in the corner, when it will set done to true, and then loop will then stop going round anymore. Okay? And then very lastly, the last thing I'm going to put in here is, think about back to our clock earlier. I'm going to limit the game, the speed of the game, okay? And I'm going to limit to clock.tick 20. So basically, it's going to run that loop 20 times, 20 ticks per second or something like that, okay? It's the speed. The higher that number is, the faster it's going to process and run that game loop. And then very, very lastly, to finish and close the game, when this loop is done, okay, when this has gone around here, to close the game window, we're simply going to go pygame.quit, like this. So we've got our Boolean variable done here. When they click the cross in the corner, it's going to then turn it to true and then quit the game down here. See what that looks like? Let's run the game now. Here's my game window. And as soon as I click the cross, the whole game closes. The whole window closes like that. Okay. So we've now got basic recap today. We're importing Pygame. We're initializing it. We've got some basic colors. We're setting up our game window here, our caption, creating a clock to control our loop. And down here, we can limit the game time, the clock number of ticks. And then our main game loop. And all we've done so far is listen out for when you click the cross button and then quit the game at the end. Try this out, please. Make sure you've got the evidence to show from your examples, and then move on to the next video. Good luck.